Hello everyone, my name is Ita McGuigan. It has just gone 10 o'clock, so I'm going to give everyone a couple of minutes to log in. We are very excited to run another Faculty of Science and Engineering STEM talk aimed at TY 5th and 6th year students, teachers, guidance counsellors, the general public indeed. And I know a couple of schools who are joining us asked for the link to show to other classes later on this week or next week, and that's perfectly fine too. My name is Ita. I work in the admissions office, so you would have all received an email from me. So if you have any questions after today's talk, please don't hesitate to send me an email and I will find the answer for you if I don't know the answer myself. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Peter Mooney from the Computer Science department at Maynooth University. And I suppose Peter was looking at the geography curriculum or the maths and computer science. And just before we came live at 10 o'clock, Peter was showing me some of the slides and it really looks really interesting. It's whetted my appetite about all this artificial intelligence and data gathering that companies are doing on us. And so I think it'll be a really good, interesting talk. Just to let you know that we are recording today's talk just for schools, so I can send the link out to schools later on this afternoon. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the question and answers box on the box there in Zoom. I'll be monitoring the questions. I'll stop Peter during it if there's something really urgent that I need to ask him, or we can leave the questions to the end. If you're on social media, if you want to tag us about the talk, it's at Maynooth CAO. So with that in mind, it's a very informal talk. As I say, Peter showed me the slides just there, 10 to 10. And I definitely was really interested in it, and I hope you and your students enjoy it. And as I say, you've got my email address. Don't hesitate to drop me an email afterwards. And with that, yes, no, you came in there right on time, Peter. I was actually slagging Peter during the week. I'm very sore about Peter's living. Peter went to school locally in Kilcock, and I was like, where are you living now? And he was like, in Newbridge. And I have bad memories in Newbridge, Kildare, Hammer and Monaghan at the weekend. Peter, I'm still a wee bit sore about that. So maybe you could develop some artificial intelligence for the Monaghan team that might...
We'll try and cheer you up there now for the next few minutes.
You try and cheer me up. Peter, I'm available in the background. I'm just going to turn off my video, but I'll be monitoring the questions. Shout if you need a hand. I'm here. And everyone, really appreciate you joining us this morning. Enjoy. And Peter, I'm going to hand over to you. And if you see me appear and back on screen, it's because there's a question that I have the students have. Okay, best luck, Peter.
Just shout if there's a question, Ita. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, will do. Okay.
So good morning, everyone. And it gives me great pleasure to join you today for this talk. And I have a big, long title, but I'm going to talk about and introduce myself in a moment. But the key today is how are geography and computer science linked together? And one of the many ways that they're linked together is using artificial intelligence. So I'm an assistant professor that's a lecturer in computer science here in Maynooth University. And just to give you a little menu of what we're going to talk about today, I suppose there's three broad areas, and that is, what is geographic or spatial data, and this idea of geolocation? Why is that very important in today's world? And then, how do computers actually work with geographic or spatial data? Because we all are using our smartphones, and we're using apps, and we're using online services. And many of those use geographic or spatial data. And finally, we look in a light-hearted but actually serious way on how spatial data can be used by artificial intelligence to give us humans and computers, I suppose, special superpowers. So a little bit about me. I did the Leaving Cert a long time ago. I'll let you try to guess how old I am, but I did my Leaving Cert in Sculdara, Kilcock in County Kildare, Ireland. And my claim to fame, I suppose, is not getting the highest points. Certainly wasn't the highest point student in the class by any means, but I did ordinary level maths for my junior cert and never really passed a maths exam until I got to my ordinary level junior cert. And then I talked to my career guidance teacher and my maths teacher also, and they supported giving me the chance to do higher level maths for leaving cert. And a lot of people thought this was crazy, but I was willing to work really, really hard, and I did. And I did very well. And it really gave me that love then to go on to university to do science. And I went into Maynooth then, and I did what's known as a kind of a general science degree, where you have a selection of science subjects. And I finished off picking computer science and mathematical physics as my two subjects. From there, I went and did my PhD directly after my degree. So that's 4 years of research. And at that time, I wasn't completely sure what I was going to do. And when I was younger, some people said to me, would you consider working in the environmental areas? And I said, no, I want to be a physicist. I'm not going to be doing that. But as life worked out, I ended up working for the Environmental Protection Agency here in Ireland as a scientist and a data person and a programmer for around 10 years. So I'm lecturing at Maynooth since 2016. So this is a picture of me in my lecturing clothes, but this is when I do some of my hobbies, such as running, and I really love gardening as well. So I work in a research area called geocomputation. And if you've not heard of the word geocomputation before, it's the idea of combining geography and computer science together and giving us what's in the middle here. So we're combining computer science and some statistics and some web and internet development and application with geography and with geographical information science. So a very simple example is this map of air pollution in London. So we need to combine lots of geographic data about air quality and about the city and about what type of a city it is. And then computer science can generate maps that people can understand here, with the yellow being a specific concentration of a pollutant. So geocomputation then is gathering, using, displaying, analyzing data, but most importantly, spatial data. So let's look at a couple of examples of what spatial data actually is. So this is the kind of data that I would work with and my students work with in their projects and their research and in their classes. Let's just think about spatial data for a minute as any data you can think of, but crucially any data that can be linked to a location or a place anywhere on the earth. From anywhere from the North Pole to the South Pole, doesn't matter. So let's have a look here. In the middle here, we have a road network of the United States. Very, very big road network. Well, that's all spatial data because it's all these different roads connected to each other, which show you how to get from one side of the United States to the other. In the left-hand side, we have an Instagram post here from someone on their holidays in Chicago, and they are linking their photograph to the river walk in Chicago. Here we have some air quality for Ireland, showing you the current air quality in County Offaly in Ireland. And all of the dots there are showing you the air quality, how good your air is in different parts of Ireland. Up in the top right-hand corner, we have a Snapchat map where people post to Snapchat, but they also add the location. So here's a concert from a few days ago in the Nottingham Arena in the United Kingdom, and we can zoom in there and we can watch a little video of the concert as it's happening. And then a tweet. For those who use Twitter, you can add a location or a geolocation to your tweet. So that tweet is connected then to O'Connell Street in Ireland, for example, in Dublin. And this diagram here is the formal scientific diagram showing you the real world and how different parts of the real world have different types of data. Elevation, that's the height of things. Land use, so is it grass? Is it river? Is it pavement? Is it buildings? Parcels is the fields, the parks, the roads, etc. Then streets, and then things like counties and provinces. So spatial data, you can see, is very, very different. All these examples show you a very different picture of what it means to say the word spatial data. Now, all of us, humans all over the world, generate a lot of data every minute of the day. So just stop to think for a minute now. I am generating data because I'm on this Zoom meeting. But maybe before the Zoom meeting, you sent an email or you downloaded something from TikTok. Maybe you shared a story on Instagram. Maybe you looked up something on Wikipedia. You might have checked out a video on YouTube or something. Well, we are generating a huge amount of data every minute. And the fact that everyone is generating data gives us this word called big data, because there's so much of it. It's massive. Think about this. In about a minute, there will be almost 700,000 stories shared on Instagram. That's just in one minute. There will be almost 70 million messages sent on social messaging platforms. 70 million. That is absolutely huge. And all of that big data then is one of the ingredients to give computers superpowers. And computer science gets superpowers from artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, don't worry so much about reading what's written here, because I'm going to go through examples of each of these. But this box here shows you a little bit how these things are organized. Artificial intelligence is this idea of computers trying to think about things, to solve problems in the same way as humans, or indeed any living thing, can solve problems. So then a very special type of that type of intelligence is called machine learning. And that's where computers take data and they look for patterns in that data. So think about when you do your shopping in Tesco's or in SuperValu and you use your loyalty card or your club card. Well, Tesco's and SuperValu and all of the other stores can look at the patterns there and figure out what types of products you might be interested in buying the next time you shop. Machine vision then is very special because that's where computers gain the ability to understand what's in an image or a photograph or a video. So you know when you're taking a photograph with your smartphone and it's able to put a circle around the person, or it's able to figure out that it's a flower or a dog or a person in the photograph, that's machine vision. And then finally, the one that we don't really see, but it's everywhere around us, is this idea of neural networks and deep learning. And that is where we try to imitate our brains so that computers can learn in the same way. So this might be in learning to read handwriting, learning to translate languages, learning to solve mathematical problems. So, as I said a few minutes ago, one of the ingredients for artificial intelligence superpowers is data. But we're generating lots of data, and lots of it is spatial data. So we need data, we need lots of computers, we need lots of time, because sometimes it takes a long time for the computers to learn these things. We're going to need some money to pay for all of the computers and, of course, all of the electricity that is used in running all of these computers that are giving these AI superpowers to particular types of applications.
Peter, can I just ask there, and I suppose I was getting a wee bit concerned, well, not concerned, I was like, oh God, when I send a WhatsApp, or I'm not really on social media, but if I send a tweet or if I put a story on Instagram, someone out there is collecting a load of data on Ita McGuigan. So should I be concerned as a user who's collecting my data when I'm using all these apps? You know, or it's because I know your slides are going to talk more and it's really interesting, but when I seen that, I was like, God, should we be more protective, or is that why GDPR came in on data gathering, or is that not linked at all?
No, that's a great question, and it's a really big topic. And I suppose the best way to answer the question quickly is that everybody has a different level of want to share information. So some people will want to share lots of information and they don't really mind who sees that. And that's absolutely fine. Some people are much more private and they don't want to share so much information. And that's a point that we will make actually in a few minutes' time, is that information about yourself, particularly your location, is very, very private. It's almost like your date of birth. It's almost like your DNA. You certainly don't want everybody in the world knowing about it. So something that is very important for us as users, but also the big tech companies who are doing this, is that we have to think about how we think about our own privacy, but also there are laws like GDPR and regulation there that prevents companies from gathering information on us in secret and using it to maybe sell us products or somehow influence our decisions. But sometimes companies don't always pay attention to this and might break the rules. And that's what governments and other types of agencies are there for, to prevent that happening. But the bottom line is that every time we make an Instagram post, for example, or we share something online, we should always think about where might this end up.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to think about. And after that, then it's just ensuring that you make good decisions around how you're sharing.
Yeah, you're right. And I'll stop. I'll go off after this. But just when you say that, we've seen a number of high-profile resignations or sackings in the last couple of years because of what people put out on social media, possibly as a joke, but it wasn't correct to do so. But I'm also thinking about our audience here, and in a few years' time they'll be applying for jobs. So, what they put out on social media may come back to haunt them when they're applying for jobs. So just be conscious of that. But Peter, apologies. I'm going to let you go on.
No, that's absolutely fine. And that is something that, with all of this big data, the internet will always remember what happened. So in 5 years' time, if you have a silly photo out there that you didn't really want people to see on the internet, it's best not share it openly now, because it might pop up in 5 or 10 years' time and be a little bit embarrassing. So it's always think about what you're sharing and think about if you really want that to be available openly or accessibly on the internet.
Thanks, Peter.
And going on that about photographs, when we're talking about superpowers, how do we give a computer a superpower? And a very simple superpower that humans have is the ability to recognize objects in the real world. Now, suppose you want to create a phone application that is able to recognize photographs of baby elephants. Now, baby elephants are really, really cute, and it's quite obvious that a baby elephant is very easy to recognize. And as humans, we could see a baby elephant and notice and recognize it straight away. To make a computer or an app recognize a baby elephant, what we have to do is gather thousands and thousands of pictures of baby elephants in all different situations, lying down, playing with other elephants, in grass, in water, etc. And we use one of these deep learning networks, which then will learn a bit like our brain learns. And then when it sees a brand new picture of a baby elephant, it can say, yes, that's a baby elephant. But it hopefully will be able to say, no, this picture down here is a rhino. And that's definitely not a baby elephant. Now, what about humans? How long does it take a human to recognize a baby elephant? Well, think back to the first time that you've seen a photograph of a baby elephant. You probably only needed to see 1 or 2 photographs. And then you could recognize every baby elephant in the world. That's incredible. And also, you can very easily tell whether the spatial data about a baby elephant is incorrect or not. So look at this baby elephant here crossing the street in Manhattan, New York. There is no baby elephants allowed cross the street in Manhattan. So you as a human know that that baby elephant is in the wrong place. But to give a computer that superpower, you will have to train it to understand that baby elephants should not be crossing at pedestrian crossings in busy cities around the world. So that probably has us thinking, are computers really that intelligent at all? Well, I'm going to show some examples of where they are and where they are very intelligent. One really good example of artificial intelligence is using route planning. So if you've ever used Google Maps, for example, as you're walking around a town or a city, or maybe you've been in a car where people are using a sat nav. Well, the sat nav, the satellite navigation system, can in real time figure out where there's lots of traffic and figure out a way to avoid that route. Now, if you don't have that information, you will just end up driving into the traffic. And also for very complex cities like this here, just imagine trying to arrive into Dublin City, for example, for the very first time. A sat nav is very, very useful. And artificial intelligence helps you plan the route, for example, from the airport to your hotel or from the airport to the concert or the football game. Now, I'm sure a lot of people watching are YouTube fans and Netflix fans. And both of those systems and many others use machine learning. So how does YouTube always seem to know the right thing to recommend you when you watch a song, watch a video, watch a movie or something on YouTube? It always seems to know really good other options for you to watch after you finish the current video. And just like Netflix always seems to know things that would be very similar to what you were looking at. So for example, if you've just watched Marvel's Jessica Jones, it's suggesting some other similar type content for you to watch. How does it do this? It simply keeps a record of all of the videos that people are watching, but crucially, all of the videos that people watch after they watch a particular video. And then machine learning can find patterns in those. So this is why we get this idea of trending or most popular. So we see loss frequencies here, and we see lots of loss frequencies suggested in the follow-ups. So machine learning is what's happening around there. Humans are very bad at this, but computers are very, very good at this type of data analysis. From a spatial point of view, machine vision, I'm sure you've all seen or heard about drones, and drones are very useful in agricultural settings, for example, where a drone can fly over a piece of crop or a piece of land with a camera installed, and it can see where the crop is growing very well, very strong, or where there may be parts of the crop which are not growing so well, or maybe even have a disease or some kind of problem. Now, when a drone looks at a piece of agricultural cropland, this is the picture on the right-hand side that the drone sees. It sees colors and objects, whereas you and I, as human beings, see a perfect image, a perfect photograph from above. And we could tell that this is a shed and these are trees, for example, and these are cars, whereas the drone has to figure out based on color. So how machine vision applications see the world is very different to how humans see the world. And then the final example in this set is of deep learning. And two really, really important examples in this time in our world is self-driving cars and voice assistants on smartphones and on computers and websites, etc. Look at the bottom left screen here. This is how a smart self-driving car sees the world. It sees boxes up ahead. They are the other vehicles in the field of vision. Notice that it sends out these circles here, trying to figure out how far the other vehicles are away from them. In around a city, the smart vehicle then would see all these boxes. The boxes that are tall are probably humans or buildings, and these boxes that are pink color or purple color are probably other vehicles. So a self-driving car is using spatial data all the time, because it would be figuring out that, well, a building should not be in the middle of a road, but a car can be in the middle of a road, just like these pedestrians crossing, probably at a pedestrian crossing. The voice assistants. So when you record your voice on a smartphone app and it can translate it to Italian or Spanish or French or something like that, AI is responsible for that translation. So this is when you maybe tell Alexa, play a particular song. This is how Alexa understands what you're saying. So does that mean that AI robots, and remember, robots are just these really cool types of machines with computers built inside them. So a robot is a computer that maybe looks like a human. So are computers going to maybe turn evil and take over the world? So here's an example of a robot who is doing some healthcare. So the robot is in a hospital and it is monitoring a patient in the hospital. This is playing the role of a nurse or a doctor. So is there a possibility that this is real? Well, it's okay for the moment, and it will be for a long time. One of the world's leading experts on artificial intelligence, Yann LeCun, who's a French scientist who has worked with Facebook and other big companies in his career, he says that the best robots available are still less intelligent than your pet cat. Now, why is that? Well, think about this. If your pet cat is jumping up on the table to beg for some food at dinner time, who trained the pet cat to jump up on the table? No one did. The pet cat just knows how to do that. How does the pet cat know how to jump off the table? How does it know how to run after a mouse? How does it know how to see in the dark? How does it know who their owner is? It has learned almost everything about the world without ever being trained. Whereas if we want a robot to work in a warehouse, for example, we have to train it. And like the example of the baby elephants, we'll need a lot of data. We need a lot of time and a lot of computers to train that robot. So even a nice little pet cat here is probably possessing more superpowers than AI systems have. But that's not to say that AI systems are somehow dumb or not clever. Their ability comes in their real superpower of working with lots and lots of data and making decisions quickly that us humans are not very fast at doing. So that brings us to the point of asking, when we combine AI and machine learning and spatial data, what happens? Because think about it, AI and machine learning have this ability to look through all of this data and make decisions, to drive vehicles, to analyze crops, to learn to identify objects. So imagine then putting spatial data on top of that. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Are your parents or guardians actually superpowered GeoAI machines in disguise? I wonder, are they? Because pretend for a moment that you have been out with your friends at the weekend and you come back home. Think about the questions that your parent or guardian might ask you when you arrive at the door. Where have you been? Who was there with you? How long were you there? How far away from the house were you? They are asking lots of spatial data questions. Where, that's the location. How far, so the distance to from between two places. How long were you there? So your parents are gathering lots of spatial data, and they're using that spatial data to make a decision. So the decision might be to say, okay, I don't think you should go there anymore, or okay, I hope you had a really nice time and you can go back there again next weekend. And that's because, and it's a little bit like the question Ita asked a few minutes ago, your location is a really powerful piece of data. Your location tells you so much about where you fit in the world. It obviously allows the postman or postwoman to deliver letters to you. It allows the delivery person to bring that package to you. But it also tells you how far you are away from other things or who is close by. and what is close by. So when you want to order a pizza, or you want to see what restaurants are nearby, or you want to check out what the weather is. And geolocation is often very simply expressed as coordinates. So for those of you doing any level of maths in secondary school, X and Y, the famous X and Y pair on a Cartesian graph. Well, in the real world of around Earth, we have latitude and longitude. And every place, every point on the Earth has its own latitude and longitude, which are two numbers, with the latitude and longitude looking like, so the latitude is the ones going across here. So the equator is a line of latitude, and the line of longitude, and these lines going from north to south are the latitudes. So what does that mean? Well, that means that every place on the Earth then has a coordinate, and sat navs then can be used to use this information to get you from your home, for example, to the M50. And smartphones are able to figure out where you are, or the phone is, by having its location turned on. So this goes back to Rita's question again, that asks, some people might choose to turn location off, so then the phone does not know where on the Earth it is. But some people like to have this on, and some people like to have it switched off. One set of people that like to have the location switched on are cyclists. And this is not just people who are professional cyclists, but people who are cycling out around their locality for a weekend cycle. Strava is a very famous service online where if a cyclist has their smartwatch or a smart device attached to their bike, and it is able to geolocate them on their cycle, they can upload their cycle to the internet, and then we can see these maps like this on Strava. And again, this is just a map with the geolocations of all of the cycle routes. And look at all the road networks. You can make out the cities and towns. You can make out the major routes. You can see maybe places where there are no cycle paths. And for example, in Connemara in the west, where there's lots of mountains and there's not so many roads. But if we zoom in here for a minute to Dublin City, you can see how the cyclists are marking out the shape of the Phoenix Park, for example, or are following the River Liffey right along the city centre. Just like London in the UK, notice that it has more cycle routes than in Dublin. And that's because there are more people cycling in London than there are in Dublin. There's lots of more people. Of course, there's millions more people living there. But you can see how the city is traced out using the geolocation. Now, there are lots of ways to use geolocation. For example, if you're interested in soccer, Cristiano Ronaldo here, I know he's in his old Juventus jersey, but this shows a heat map of where he was located the most during soccer matches, red being the most frequently visited area of the pitch. So notice that Cristiano Ronaldo spends very little time in defense. He is always in attack. And I think if you're a soccer follower, you will know that. Here's an example of a heat map for crimes that occurred in San Francisco, USA. And we can see that along the very downtown area, the very busy area of San Francisco, the most crimes are occurring. Where outside here in the suburbs and the quieter areas, there are far less crimes, to the point where there are none out here where the blue lines are around the edges. In this bottom right-hand corner, a heat map shows geolocated houses. And the red colors indicate the most expensive houses to buy. And the blue colors would represent the lowest price houses you can buy. And finally, a clothes shop can be geolocated. and everyone coming in could be geolocated. So notice the red spot is right at the door because everyone who visits the shop stands at the door. But notice that very few people seem to go to the very end of the shop, only a few people. So this is places where geolocation is used in so many different ways, but it's AI and machine learning that is helping us create those intersections of all those geolocations and make these nice maps. So what you should start thinking about is your GeoCircle. So that, think about standing somewhere and then drawing an imaginary circle, maybe of a radius, maybe 2 kilometers around you. So let's pretend that these 2 dots here, let's pretend this is Ita, who's introduced the talk and you've met already, and this is myself. And this is currently our circles. But then Ita decides to travel into Dublin city centre on the bus, and I decide to travel down to South Dublin. Maybe I'm going to a soccer game in the Aviva Stadium. But now notice that our circles are overlapping. So now we share a common space. And this is maybe where some things like dating apps and social media apps can figure out who is nearby. So which friends is closest to you. Or maybe there's a new friend suggestion in your social network because your circles are overlapping. And what that means is that your geolocation is making you part of these big geo networks of all of these different things that are combined together over the internet, but all understand some spatial data. So here you are. So you might be in the car with your friends or your parents or family, and you need to find out where the nearest fuel station is. So you look that up on the internet. But then you might need to find a Wi-Fi hotspot up here. But then you might need to find out some more information about cars. You might need to find out about traffic. Maybe you're not in the car at all and you're looking up some bus timetables. Or maybe you're just sitting here back playing some online games or listening to some music just at home, just relaxing. Maybe you're just online, just chatting with your friends. But all of it is a connected geographical network. So let's just start to move towards the finish line of this talk. And what I've done here is I've had a look at the Leaving Cert, and I've said what part of Leaving Cert geography is really connected to geocomputation. Now, I have to admit, when I was in secondary school, I didn't do geography. I've never studied geography. My choice subjects in secondary school were physics, construction studies, and I forget my third one actually, but I did physics and construction studies at that time. But mapping skills are very important. Learning how to read a map, grid references, understanding the scale of a map. Urban development, because all of us are using our smart devices in cities and towns, and urban environments are very important for understanding how geolocation plays a role. Aerial photography, being able to draw sketch maps yourself from aerial photographs, and being able to understand basic statistics about the world around you, economic growth, social economic indicators, for example. And this is a higher level paper, but this also goes for ordinary level. These skills are also available there. It doesn't just have to be higher level. And then mathematics. So I've taken an example from higher level, but many of these topics are also available on the ordinary level paper. And remember that you don't have to be a mathematical genius to work in geocomputation. I showed you that. I was not the highest scorer, not the best student in my class at all. But if you're able to understand some mathematics, it will be very helpful. But remember, there will always be support available for you in different courses to help you with some of the mathematical ideas around things like GeoAI and geocomputation. But some of the things that you will see in your course will be geometry, trigonometry, And one of the most useful things is coordinate geometry. So the distance, the slope of a line, creating a line, the angle between two lines. Why are those important? Well, that's how self-driving cars are figuring out the distance to objects. It's figuring out how fast it needs to go up a hill, or how sharp a turn is on a road. Statistics and probability are also used a lot. What's the probability someone will look at a video of computer gaming if they have already looked at a computer game video? Calculus is really, really important in deep learning and AI. So differentiation, looking at rates of change, for example. And then something that's on all of the courses is functions and graphs. Knowing what a function looks like when you draw it on a graph is very, very important. So being able to draw graphs actually by hand is a very important skill, which you may not think it is, but believe me, it is very, very useful. So what type of jobs are available for you in the future in this area? Well, the reason why I have this girl holding a really long sheet of paper is because the list is actually endless. There's no way I could include all of the different jobs. There will be jobs in cybersecurity because more and more things are online now. So we need to make sure they are secure and safe. You've probably heard of the metaverse, this idea of 3D social interactions, of avatars, of virtual worlds. There's going to be jobs in the future of being a virtual avatar clothing designer, a virtual avatar artist, architects, etc. Other things like personal privacy engineering, how to make sure that our privacy is looked after. Robotics, using them to help us in healthcare and education, etc. Machine translations, social networks, but crucially, jobs that we cannot even think of now. Many of your teachers will have been in secondary school 15 years ago, and that was before the iPhone was released. That is only 15 years ago. So there was no such thing as a smart app developer 15 years ago. And now there are millions of jobs as smart app developers. So just to finish off, some of my tips on becoming a great scientist or great in any career: 3 things. Be nice to all people, everybody, because that will really be helpful to you in life. Work hard on things that you're really passionate about. So like this little guy here is passionate about gardening. If you're really interested in that, work hard at it. It will pay off later, regardless of what area it is, whether it's in science, whether it's in technology, whether it's in the arts. And never be afraid to listen to advice. Sometimes advice can be a little bit difficult to listen to because it might be telling you things that you don't really want to hear. But be like the teddy bear and keep your ears opened and listen to all that advice, because it may not be useful now, but in a couple of years' time, it certainly will. And remember, the career that you think you want today might and actually probably will change many times in the future. When I was in secondary school, I wanted to be a mathematical physicist. I wanted to work for a science company as a physicist, or I wanted to be a teacher. I also wanted to be an electrician. I also wanted to be a truck mechanic. I also wanted to drive a truck. I still want to be all of those things, but I'm also a computer scientist. So remember that just because you want to be something today doesn't mean you can't change your mind lots and lots of times in the future. Indeed, some of the most successful people often change their ideas and what they want to do lots and lots of times. Because just stop and think for a moment, even if you're watching this webinar live or you're watching it in a rerun, think about yourself 5 or 6 years ago. If you're a secondary school student, you were probably in primary school or just starting secondary school. In 5 years' time or 6 years' time, you could be finished college, university, an apprenticeship, a training course, and you may have started your first job. You are at an amazing stage of your lives that so much change can happen, and you have so much opportunity. And that opportunity itself is indeed a superpower. So remember, you may be here in your comfort zone, but very often a little hard work means that you move outside your comfort zone to where the really cool things in life can happen. So just remember, the takeaway message here today is your location is a very powerful piece of data. It can help you unlock your superpowers. It can also help all those AI systems and machine learning systems to help you navigate the world. And as we go forward, as we become even more digital in our lives, your location is going to become more and more important. And as a result, geocomputation and the work that people like me do in universities are going to become more important too. So we look forward to some of you maybe joining us someday and doing some of that work in a really exciting environment. So thanks for watching. My email is there below, but there's chance for questions now. Thank you for watching.
Thanks a million, Peter. I'm learning a lot, and you know, as I said before, I'm not active on social media really, but now I'm gonna change all my settings, and then I'm like, oh goodness, I'm very, very, very slow at running. I'm very slow on a bike, and what information am I putting on Strava that people can laugh at how slow I am? I'm going to welcome any questions that we may have, but just before any questions come in, just to remind schools that I will send this recording. I was struck, Peter, that you come into science without the geography and without the computer science, and now look at your fascinating job and the research that you're doing. How did you adapt coming into Maynooth it was Maynooth University, but how did you come into a science course, you know, studying, specializing in geography and computer science without having them in your leaving cert? And is that a barrier to anyone listening now, or would you encourage them to, this can be done?
Yeah, I think it's very important that people understand that there are no barriers today except the ones that you put up for yourself, particularly with college and university courses. So that does not stop you, like it didn't stop me, going into a science course and maybe not feeling that I was the best at maths in the world or the best at physics, but all courses, not just in Maynooth, but in all colleges and universities and training schools and centres for further education, provide support such as mathematical supports, such as computing supports, that help you, give you that extra bit of help to figure out, almost like a little extra tutorial or some extra assistance, so that if you're willing to put in a little bit of extra hard work, and that's the key ingredient, Ita, it's not about being the cleverest in the class or, you know, getting the best marks. It's if you're really willing to work, that's where the real magic happens, because then you can visit this computer support center, the math support center, for example, like in Maynooth University, and they can help you figure out that difficult problem, or maybe you're having a little bit of, you know, little bit of brain fog figuring out something in geography, or, you know, in one of those courses, and some of the tutors there can sit down with you one-to-one and work through it.
Yeah, and actually you just reminded me, I was talking to a girl who is in 4th year in science, and she was just telling me her story, because I'm always looking for interesting stories in students who came different routes, whether it was a PLC route into science or possibly started a different course and transferred into science, to get the word out to students. Look, at not everyone walks straight into their dream course, and there's alternative ways to get into it. But she was telling me, you know, she had ordinary level maths and she came into general science in Maynooth, and she said she hated maths at the time. She really struggled. And she said, luckily, because she lived away from home and she didn't know anyone, she kind of said, oh, look, I'll just go to the math support center and see how I get on. And she told me the very first time she went, she has now met her best friend. They've been living in the same accommodation for the last few years together, even though they're from different courses. Because if you go and look for the help in the math support center, you could be sitting beside someone who is studying business studies, or you could be sitting beside someone who's doing arts or whatever. So you can make friends for life. And it's actually a good social, she was telling me about the social scene, going to get help in the support center. Another thing that struck me, my background's engineering, but I just finished a course in marketing there recently, and I was really struck by the slide that you had on, you know, the heat map. You had, I think, Ronaldo, I'm not really into soccer, but yeah, I think it was Ronaldo on one corner, but then on another corner you had the heat map of a shop floor. So I noticed that the back of the shop, or towards the back end of the shop, there was less red spots or red areas.
Yeah.
So even that is really important, say, for marketeers or someone who is in sales. So and even like in product placement in shops. So whoever's going to get to the back of the shop isn't going to have as many sales as the products at the front of the shop. So this isn't just science. This is like, sales, marketing. It's nearly in every job. And Peter, I remember like a few years ago, I love learning, and I was doing another course from my sins. And I remember at the time it was in strategy and innovation, and they were telling us that. So that was about 4 years ago, and they told us then that in 10 years' time, so now that would be 6 years' time, that 60% or some high percentage amount of jobs won't be available because robots will be doing them. So say 4 years ago, some high percentage of jobs won't be available because robots will be doing them. Would you agree with that? Or would you think, no, when you put up the picture of the cat, I was like, well, if cats are more intelligent than robots, surely humans are still needed in jobs.
It's a really great topic to talk about in terms of what jobs can robots do that will replace humans. And I think, as we said in the talk there, robots are very good at things like sorting, at moving, at digesting lots of data. So if we think of some of the jobs there, maybe working, for example, in an Amazon warehouse would be a great job for a robot, because it's a very specific type of job. But where humans have the real edge, just like the cat has the real edge on a robot, is the ability to make decisions and to understand the implications of those decisions. So if we take your example of the shop, the robot could figure out where to move items in a shop and stack the shelves, etc. But it wouldn't be able to give you the insight to say, we need to move that product to a different part of the shop because nobody is buying it because it's there at the very back. So there will be jobs where robots will be much more in tune for doing. So maybe like working with picking crops, for example. That's a very hard job for humans, bending down and working out in the heat and everything, whereas a robot has no problem with that. But humans can be involved in the planning of the crops, what happens to the produce, where it goes. So the abilities for us to make decisions, to understand data without being trained, what makes us different. So there's probably no chance, I think, in the next 10 or 20 years of robots taking over, because we still hold the edge there. But we will have a future society where they will play a bigger role, particularly around maybe assistance to elderly people, for example, maybe even educational assistance, so that maybe if you're a student who's a bit shy about talking to the tutor in maths, there may be a virtual assistant there who you might feel a little bit more comfortable talking to on a one-to-one situation. So there's great opportunities. Some of them we can't even imagine yet.
Brilliant, Peter. I just want to thank you on behalf of, hopefully I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. I thought that was so insightful, so interesting. Going to check all my data settings on my phone. But, the way that you brought it all together, because as I say, my background is in computer science, but then seeing Ronaldo, seeing the shop, seeing where I'm going cycling or running or whatever, all that is, it impacts or affects everyone. So it was really insightful. Anyone who has any questions, I'm more than happy to take any questions via email. I'm going to send this recording out to all the schools this afternoon when I get it up on YouTube. And I just want to thank Peter for the generosity of his time and sharing of the knowledge. And I hope people find it beneficial. Peter, thank you. It has been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you everyone for watching.
Slán,
bye bye. Take care.